Hello everyone, this is Brian, and welcome back to Twilight Struggle Play the Experts, the game where I play the experts, and you try to guess what my headline cards will be. Now, last time we started with a crazy turn. We took a shot at his hand unsuccessfully with 5-year plan and came up a whiffer, but then all heck broke loose in Asia. It was an ops war all the way, and when the smoke cleared, we had actually prevented him from dominating Asia, and yet Europe was in a bit of a shambles. We cleaned him back out of France with the Truman Doctrine, and then we had another interesting turn where we headlined CIA, caught him with a bunch of scoring cards and low ops, but he had us in a quagmire. Well, we dequagmired ourselves, and we were able to force a domination in the Middle East for the American team, which brings the score to 0 as we go to turn 5, the second turn of the mid-war. So the score is 0-0. And we are just gonna have to try to build some kind of lead. See if we can break out of the pack here before we get pummeled. Now, our hand this time has some interesting cards. As you can see, I always kind of start with, well, what's the ops value? And the ops value is not very high, particularly since both of our 3 ops cards are probably, one, whether they played this turn or at some other turn, they're going to want to be used for the event. So really our max op card is 2. We've got Liberation Theology, which we definitely want to send to space, particularly with the 2-point square sitting right there. And Willy Brandt is not quite so bad of an event, but honestly, it gives him a point. I don't want to give him a point just to get 2 ops. And right now I'm in the spot where I can send 2 cards to space. So those 2 cards are probably both going to space. If something terrible happens, then, and we have an emergency, a 2 ops emergency, then it is conceivable we could use Willy Brandt or something like that. But I don't really predict it. Panama Canal has seen better days for getting played, and, it wouldn't be bad to at least have some infiltrators into Costa Rica and Panama there and to put Venezuela beyond the pale for all time. But, if we need an op to do something else, we'll use it freely. Missile Envy, I'm pretty sure, Duck and Cover has already kind of come and gone. That was one of our turn 3 choices. So we would safely be able to play Missile Envy and swipe one of his cards. And that is cool and exciting. But the card that is of most interest to me for headline purposes is Junta. Because, there's 2 regular major regions that have not scored yet, and those are Africa and South America. So those are the cards that are upcoming. Now, we control the Africa card, and since we see the Africa card is coming this turn, I would normally be looking at what I could do for Africa, which would probably from this hand be headlining Missile Envy and hoping I get one of his event cards and I can take a coup with it. But given that South America is coming up sometime in the next, this turn, next turn, or possibly turn 7, having a card as good as Junta and one that guarantees stealing the coup tempo for him, whereas Missile Envy usually doesn't, because he gets to pick which of his highest cards he has to give us. So he'll be extra loath to give us a Soviet event that would turn into a big ops card for us. So I think that's worth slightly switching focus to Junta, particularly because stealing the coup actually helps us in Africa. Otherwise, because his best coup right now is Nigeria. So that pretty much settles me on Junta as the best card. And without many ops, playable ops, we're probably just trying to avoid getting dominated in Africa this turn. Our big kahuna is the brush war, and we could have a 50-50 shot at grabbing one of those southern little one countries from him. Or if he gets his paws into Nigeria, we could have a 2 out of 3 shot at that. I always hate to, I'd always rather have a clean brush war where we can win on a 3-6. But it would still be worth doing if that was gonna, prevent us from getting dominated in Africa. So let's highline Junta and steal his coup. Oh, so he's headlined How I Learned to Stop Worrying, and that is an elegant headline. That is elegantly played. He knows that there are quite a number of cards that I could have, including Junta, also including grain sales, and sometimes missile envy of the cards that are still out. Cards that would steal allow me to coup in headline or drop the DEFCON in headline and keep him from having a coup. And by headlining that card, he says, well, I think I'm just going to go ahead and get a coup anyway because, see, his card goes after my card, and it would, in fact, go after all of those cards I mentioned. And he's going to get set the DEFCON to wherever he wants it. So what I think is going to happen is I'm going to get a coup with Junta, and then he's going to set the DEFCON back to 3, and he's going to take a coup. So that bodes ill for Nigeria, but there is nothing for it but to do the best we can, and so we will take our Junta. And we, first of all, get to place 2 influence anywhere, and that will clearly be taking control of Argentina. That is awesome, we're now infiltrated into both halves of South America. There's kind of the north half with Venezuela and Brazil, and then there's the south half with Argentina and Chile. And yeah, we are now firmly installed in both. I would have liked to be there without him getting to take a coup, but there is no reason not to go ahead and blam away at Brazil. If we get a 6, we could have it all to ourselves. But we got a 3, and we put a chink in him. That's something. That is something. All right, so here comes How I Learned to Stop Worrying. And shock of shocks, he's setting the DEFCON back to 3, so he'll be able to take a coup. He also gets 5 military ops, so he's good on ops. And notice that we did not get military ops for our coup with Junta. That's because Junta offers what's called a, quote, free coup, unquote. And one of the properties of that is it doesn't give you ops. So you have to read those cards carefully, and you can, not all the cards give a free coup, but a free coup means it doesn't ignore DEFCON, DEFCON 1 problems. It does ignore the DEFCON restrictions, like where you can't coup in Europe if the DEFCON isn't 5, or you can't coup in Asia if it's, worse than 4, etc. It ignores those, and it doesn't give you ops. And that's the strange, weird property of free coups. But you always have to read it, because some of the cards don't. Like the Shea card doesn't. So anyway, there you go. So he's got 5 ops, we got no ops, and there's Che now. He is chomping down on Argentina. Okay, and he too puts a little tink in our armor, but does not get in. That is exciting. By the way, speaking of Che Guevara, I actually went to Cuba back in October, and the interesting thing was that, of course, Che was from Argentina, and I asked about the pronunciation of the name, and they said that, well, in Argentina, it would be pronounced more Che Guevara, but in Cuba they called him Che. Apparently it came from some kind of Argentinian expression of getting someone's attention or something like that. It's sort of like, hey, you, I think. And he would say it all the time, and it wasn't something that was a familiar Cuban phrase, so they just started calling him calling him Che because that's what he said all the time. Anyway, I don't know how much of that is true. That's what our Cuban tour guide told us. But I thought I would just share that in the context of the Che, or perhaps Che, card. So here we are. It's DEF CON 2. He's got ops. We don't have ops. And both Brazil and Argentina have chinks in them. So I think what we're going to do is lock down our Argentina, because that's a good one for us to be in. And I think I'm going to go ahead and poke him here, because one thing that occurs to me, I'm going to put a little prod into Brazil, which at the very least is going to make him have to work hard. He's going to have to put some influence in there. But if he does put some influence in there, then that actually gives me a clean brush war. A clean brush war that I could win 2/3 of the time. And, in a continent that is coming up quick on the scoring, I kind of like that. And I feel like partially because we've already had, we've had back and forth coups in South America, that it's kind of drawing attention away from Africa. So far, we're not playing as if anything's going on in Africa, and so far, he's not playing like anything's going on in Africa. So I'm perhaps willing to risk keeping the Africa card in my back pocket a little bit longer. See, notice that to firmly dominate Africa now, he would need 2 influence into South Africa, and then he would need another. He could just risk it on sticking a little point into one of the little 1 countries, or he could try to go firmly into the 2 into Botswana, or he could put 1 point into each of the 1 country so that even if I couped 1, that he would still dominate. And that takes a lot of ops. Like to be truly safe with a domination, you have to move with 4 ops. And he could definitely. He's got the China card. He could definitely do it. I just don't see that as a huge risk. So I think I can get away for the nonce with not losing more than 1 extra point in Africa. So I'm gonna do that because 3 countries in South America would really put some good pressure on him. So he's playing Arab-Israeli War for influence, and not too surprisingly, he goes on into Brazil to protect his outpost there. And so, I think this is the time. I think we're going to go for a clean brush war in Brazil. We need a 3 through 6, and we get a 6. We could have won a brush war just about anywhere. Oh my goodness. Bless our lucky little stars. He was caught with the South America scoring card. I guess there was a little hint that he couped us in there instead of Africa on his first coup, but really, that seemed almost more like a response to my coup, and I wasn't really suspecting that was coming this turn, but he has had to give us 5 beautiful points in South America. So, wow, and he didn't even fill Chile first. That's interesting, because filling Chile would have saved him 3 of those points. So I wonder what's going on in his hand. Does he have some terrible hand? Well, that's a reset. Okay, no more anything into South America. We are looking at Africa here. Yeah, so one totally sane thing we could do, possibly the most sane thing we could do, would just to be to score off Africa at 0. Just go for a big nullo. I may do that, but there's this other, on a lark, I'm thinking of playing Missile Envy. Now, Missile Envy is safe because he doesn't have any of our cards he could hand us. The only card of ours that he could hand us that would force us to degrade DEF CON as the event is duck and cover, and that already got played on turn 3. So basically, I'm just looking at him he didn't even fill Chile. And so there's all kinds of, horrible reasons that might have been. And it just makes me want to interfere with his hand a little more. Maybe I can make him give me a really good U.S. event that he doesn't want to play before he can space it or whatever. So that's what I'm thinking of doing. I'm going to take clearly, if he had a 4 event, a 4 card, that he wanted to use, then surely he would have, if he had the wherewithal to fight a giant ops war. Yeah, I just don't see him making a giant Africa grab here, especially if I take a 4 card from him with Missile Envy. So, Missile Envy for the event on a lark, and we get the bear trap. Well, that's the opposite of a quagmire. The converse of a quagmire, the contrapositive of a quagmire. Anyway, it makes him get to be in a thing where he has to roll to get out. And the funny thing is he's going to have to throw Missile Envy away to it, not one of his bad cards. So that's a good thing, but not a great thing. But let's just see what happens. Well, he throws Missile Envy and gets out, or Missile. Look how they spell Missile Envy on that card. That's kind of funny. Anyway, he got, so we stole the card from him, and he popped Missile Envy right into the dumpster, and it's all just a big nothing. So that was just a big fat nothing, and fine. We took a shot, we missed, but it's our turn again. And now I think the only possible sane option is to ditch this card from our hand. So there it goes for nothing. All right, so he's got NORAD that he doesn't want to give us, so he is space racing it. It's just not going to be a NORAD kind of a game. We haven't wasted any influence in Canada, so that's just fine. And so 2 can play at the space race game. Let's see if we can get those points from the race. Well, failure, that happens. Okay, Nasser. Oh, yeah, that's right. He saved Nasser from last time, and he's playing it for the event this time. And sure, fine, Middle East has already scored. I guess he might be, building up for an OPEC or something like that. Of course, Sadat's still out there, so, or maybe he's got Sadat and he's saving it. I don't know. All right, so Willy Brandt, we certainly don't have any ops emergency that makes me want to give him a point just to get a few measly ops. You can kind of tell, perhaps, that I am very victory point greedy. I'm like, victory points for me now. And unless I can see some way I could trade something for a lot more victory points pretty definitely later, and unless that later isn't very much later, then I tend to go for the victory points for me now. That is my way. And so, yeah, I feel like avoiding giving him a victory point is definitely worth giving up 2 ops for. And that would be even if I wasn't taking a shot at hopefully getting some points for myself from this space track. So let's take a Willy Brandt Memorial space shot here. And didn't go in, just impacted on the surface. All right, so we remain stuck. It's going to kill me if he get one small step and catches up with in space race with all that try, but it can happen. So he's got a summit, a little 1-point card. He's got a ditch. Yeah, we sort of suspected he didn't have a lot of ops here, and so he is plinking away at Israel. I guess he's kind of, okay, so putting 1 point in there gives him the ability to theoretically grab it all from me later with a 4-ops card, the China card, something like that. Fine. And that brings us to saving ass not, which means that we need to just go ahead and play the Panama Canal card, which I think is the best we can hope for. All right, so the turn comes to an end. No points change hands on ops. DEF CON goes to 3. And we are looking at our turn 6 hand. Okay. Well, we've got a couple of good cards in here. We've got one awesome card. The Voice of America is awesome. We're going to rip 4 guys out from wherever. We'll come back to him. He's a very important card. We've got defectors, so that is an option for headlining in the sense that we could cancel his event. Now, shuttle diplomacy, sometimes that's great and sometimes that's not so great. And I think this is one of those times where the event is just not very good for us because he has us 4-2 on battlegrounds in Asia. So one battleground isn't likely to help. I guess it does. It'd give us a leg up on total country. We'd be tied. It'd put us back at tied in total countries. But it's a pretty thin thing to hang your hat on in Asia. Then there's Middle East, where we're in pretty darn good shape, and one country, again, it just doesn't seem like that's an odds-on play for us. Could be proved wrong, but it's also our biggest ops card, and I'm kind of thinking we're probably going to need it for ops. Now, Allende, I'm kind of sad to see it because it's going to fill up his Chile for him for free, but on the other hand, we just scored South America, so I'm not all that disappointed by that. Portuguese Empire Crumbles is probably the very first card off to space for us this turn. It's the only real card that fits the his bad card and eligible to go to space. So that's probably going to space, so we don't have to worry about it. Camp David Accords. Well, we're already in the region it would let us into, but it comes with a point. And so I'll be tempted to just play, go ahead and take the influence where I don't really, strictly speaking, need it, but that it nonetheless gives me a point. One small step is definitely ops because we are so far ahead of him in the space race. It's actually great that we got that card so that he's not catching up. So that leaves us the inside track on collecting all those points, very important point. And Indo-Pakistani War is not going to be useful for the war because even in India, we'd only have a 1 in 6 chance of winning the war, but we may very well need that card in order to get military ops this turn. And so that card probably saves us 2 points, and there's a little tiny chance it completely changes the Asian dynamic in a gloriously wonderful way. By the way, if it did do that, then I might be tempted to play shuttle diplomacy if I had any reason to believe that Asia was going to come up as scoring before Middle East. So those are the cards. And then, of course, there's Ask Not again, but it's, we're bringing, we've made a lot of effort to bring that card along, and so far, its time has not come around. These cards are not nearly bad enough to eject with Ask Not. So Ask Not, honestly, it's probably once again our save card, which means we're going to find a way to play all these other cards. So headline cards. The 2 really powerful cards we could headline are either Voice of America or Defectors. The thing about Voice of America is headlining it means that then he gets to do his coup and his action round to respond to it, which I don't, there's cases where that's good, but I'm not sure this is one of them. The biggest area where he's exposed on his access is in Southern Africa, and we could in fact rip him entirely out of Southern Africa, which would normally be a great crushing thing. Now, if I do it in headline, he could first of all just coup right back into Nigeria, so what's the point? I'd rather wait until after he doesn't coup into Nigeria and then rip him all the way out of Africa. And the other thing is, we have not yet seen the South African unrest card, and we're down to the last 2 turns of this deck cycle. So it's coming up this turn or next turn, and so I'm certainly, that's the most powerful thing to use it for. I'd like to be able to use it for that, but boy, would I rather know what happened with South African unrest. I'd certainly like to know he's not holding it right now. So, who knows? Maybe he'll use it for ops, and then we know what we're going to do. If we get down toward the end of the turn, we're going to have to make a hard decision on whether to, take a coin flip on whether he gets South African unrest or we do, or whether we can find somewhere else to use it. Because if we didn't have a Linde, or if we already disposed of that, and I could pop him all the way out of South America, then that would be interesting too. But as things stand, it's just not, there's just not a lot of other great, there's a little bit of opportunity in the Middle East, Egypt, Iran, things like that. Unfortunately, we don't touch Pakistan, so we can't make a little special threat there. But there's some opportunities for that, but it's not a good headline for us this turn. And that's why I'm thinking, and we don't have any other cards that do a positive thing for us that are great headlines either. So I think our best bet this turn is to go ahead and do defectors and hope to catch, hope that he had some powerful card that he was going to headline. I don't know, we will bury you to get 3 points, or thinking of what other weird Soviet things are out there. It's not come to me off the top of my head. And turn 6 is better than turn 7 to run defectors on, because if it would be like turn 3. If we come around to turn 7, then he'd know we have defectors, and he could slough off some bad card against it. And that's never a great time to headline defectors. But turn 6 is still, he's probably starting to think carefully about the dangers of defectors, but there's, less chance he's going to go out on a limb. So I'm thinking of our hand, our best shot of getting a good result in headline phase is going to be defectors. And he sloughs off a scoring card against defectors. Well, that is unfortunate. I think that just cost us 2 points. But on the other hand, of course, the scorecard might come back. So, high-rated KG player there realized that there we were getting down. There was a reasonable chance I had defectors and was going to play it, and he went ahead and said, well, I guess he wasn't planning on making a big effort one way or the other with Southeast Asia. So he decided, maybe he'll defector it, and that'll save me 2 points. And he came up with, so he outmaneuvered us on that, outmaneuvered me on that. And good for him. Good for him. Now, the interesting thing is Southeast Asia scoring, it may come back in the late war. I guess it's kind of probable that it'll come back, but it's possible it'll never come back. So, he might have gotten himself off the hook for all time on that card. We'll see how things go. So, what's he going to do? He's going to take his coup. That's smart. And unsurprisingly, he's going to crush us in a nice, easy place in Nigeria. That does have the unfortunate aspect that even if we do run Voice of America, it doesn't get him completely out of Africa, but it would still get him out of that whole little southern, if we could keep him out of there for long enough, we could just fill it all up with Americans, American advisors, influencers, movers, shakers, thought leaders, and we would do that. But now he's in Nigeria. So our plan for the turn is mostly to play through these kind of cruddy cards, of which 1, 2, 3 of them are probably going to be events, and one of them at least is going to space. So there's nowhere that I see that we need to hold the initiative. Every single region has scored now, except for Southeast Asia, which we now know is in the discard pile anyway until the reshuffle. So, till the reshuffle next turn, there's no special imminent scoring card. We're in relatively solid shape in a lot of the continents. And so I don't need to go, there's no special initiative that I need to take anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and try to grab 2 points in the space race, send the Portuguese off to space. First Portuguese person in space. No Portuguese in space. All right, so well, we get another tribe. I don't have another card I really want to send into space all that bad if it gets really, we have to get really bored to want to send a non-bad card into space. But hey, sometimes sending a 2-point card to try to get 2 points is what you need to do. We'll just see how the turn goes. All right, so he's playing Cultural Revolution for influence. Oh my, and he is paying the iron price into Libya. Okay, well, I just thought of one of the horrible Soviet cards he might have. We were just talking about what horrible Soviet cards he might have that he could have headlined, but chose wisely not to headline into our defectors. And that is the Muslim Revolution. And the first thing I thought when I saw the iron price being paid in Libya is, I think we're looking at a Muslim revolution. Because look at how beautiful that play is if he has the Muslim revolution. Breaking my control of Libya and putting the 2 points in means that if he now runs the revolution, he can completely eject me from Libya and instantly go to control, so I can't play back in. See, if he just had run, say this round, run a Muslim revolution, then he takes my 2 points out, and he probably kills me out of Iraq. But then I just put 2 points back in Libya and whatever I can afford into Iraq, and he hasn't made a lot of progress, especially if he thinks we might have a 4-op. We don't, but this is so much more effective, isn't it? Because look at the horrible dilemma it puts me in. I could either throw 2 perfectly good influence after bad, as it were, in Libya, which means that he still goes to full control as soon as he plays Muslim Revolution and now takes 4 of our influence out. Or I can choose to not do that, in which case he doesn't even need to play the Muslim Revolution. He just plays 2 influence and just takes Libya. And then if he's got the Muslim Revolution, he can move on to intimidating other countries and use it for other things, or just keep the 4 ops and keep pounding us in the Middle East. And so that's really grim. That's a bad scene, and he is making the best possible play. And the sad thing is, I feel like I pretty much need to at least go 1 round of keeping up with him there, because at least he had to spend 3 ops to do that. He had to pay the iron price to go into Libya with his first thing. So it's certain, there's a little bit of inefficiency in it for him, but there's also, what I really hate is the idea maybe I'll put 2 in Libya and maybe he's going to do the same thing in Iraq. He could play a 4 ops into Iraq or the China card and go to 3, and then he's looking at go into instant control of both of those places, and that's just really, really ugly. So he's got us over a barrel, because he honestly probably has that card when you think about it, because he's playing like he has the card, and there's only I guess there's actually a lot of cards in the deck now. There's enough cards to give us each almost a full hand of cards. So there's not going to be much of a reach around into the discard pile. But oh boy, that's a grunter. This is a grunter. He has us over the grunter. Ooh, so I guess we're going to use this 2 ops card, and we're going to go in there and hope he doesn't do us to us again. What's he going to do? Oh, it's the Muslim Revolution. Okay, well, I hate to. I was actually hoping it would be the Muslim Revolution as opposed to more horrible cards played into the Middle East, because I would feel even more helpless. It could have gotten even worse if he had a whole bunch of influence he wanted to expend on just making my life absolutely miserable. But he gets Libya, and he has ejected us from Iraq, and so I'm actually very happy to have seen that now, because at least that means now I know what my three influence are going for, and I would much rather take a definite country in the Middle East right now than take a kind of random country in Asia or the Middle East maybe later, because that also, taking Iraq back, actually lets us kind of protect Saudi Arabia from him touching it. He can't just play into Saudi Arabia, which is why I was thinking, it'd be part of what would be so devastating about, putting one more round of influence into Iraq before playing is then he would touch that also, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's good. Probably didn't work out for him. And yeah, he's going to space with colonial rear guards. And he's in, so he gets a point. He made a space roll. I think we've missed at least our last 3 consecutive space rolls, but hey, we've had luck in other ways. So Rare is a game where you can really complain too much about your luck. All right, so in terms of things we want to definitely get done before the end of the turn, we want to get our ops from the Indo-Pakistan War, and there's no big momentum thing going on right this second. So I think this is a good time to clear our hand of obligations, and a 1 in 6 chance we could take India, but we do not. So we got our 2 ops, saved our 2 points, good use. Oh, here comes OPEC. Oh, but OPEC for influence. Okay, so he is... Wow, and they go, see, if he could have played that into Saudi Arabia, that would have been good for him. But it goes there. It goes there. Interesting. So he wants to, okay, well, clearly he wants to ensure himself a good chance that the next time the Middle East comes around, he has at least 3 and maybe 4 of the battlegrounds. And so he's getting ahead, he's stealing the march from us in Israel. But he did give up 2 definite victory points to do that. And in fact, 3 if he had just been able to, if he had just put 1 point into Egypt first. So it's interesting, I was talking about how I have a very VP greedy strategy. I'm thinking VP for me now. And clearly our opponent is investing more in future scorings that aren't coming up yet, because he could have just popped basically 3 points. I mean, if I could pop, he would have played 1 influence first, but then he could have gotten at least 3 points this turn with really no argument from me. And, you know what I would have said if I could play a 3 ops card for 3 points. I would have said, take the points now. Because it's my current Twilight Struggle personality. But, so we're seeing a culture clash, a clash between 2 different viewpoints. And so we'll see if long-term investment or VP now, me now, this sort of brutal, barbaric strategy is going to win out. Because, I have to say, like, the points I've taken from greed probably account for the entire 5 points that we currently show on the victory board, or somewhere near. I haven't counted them, but that feels like about how many greedy points I might have been grabbing left and right as the thing has gone on. So here's another obligation we need to get rid of, and that is Allende. And so, see, he's going to go to full Chilean dominance, or not dominance, control is the technical term there. But I think what I'm going to do with this 1 op is take the little Hail Mary of, since he doesn't have any other influence nearby Chile, and we do have 1 controlled country adjacent, in that being Argentina, so we can realign him at even, and hey, it's not a huge shot, but the shot of completely realigning him out of Chile is, what does it say, 16%, and it would be, see, the thing is, it's not that the percentage chance of doing it is really high, it's that the crushing death blow we would have dealt to his South American hopes would be so good. So the upside is so good, and the downside is like, we lost an op. So we're going to do it. We're going to just roll it out, and we get nothing. 0. Okay, so anyway, it was a Hail Mary kind of thing, and we did it, and it didn't work. Oh, so puppet governments. He's putting us in with the puppets. Here come the puppets. And that makes me very happy vis-a-vis Saudi Arabia, and I guess he realized he just has to eat this because he's already taken a space shot. Because he would definitely rather give us this than colonial rear guards and let us spill all over Africa in a horrible way. So we do have to find something else to do with the other 2 puppets. I'm not all that excited about putting a point into Mexico just so he can coup into control. I'd rather make him do some work. So I'm going to put a point here in Botswana, so that hopefully looks a little bit harmless. If we do go with the Voice of America in Southern Africa strategy or tactic, then that gives us a toucher to get in there with. Then we could just immediately start claiming our little rightful spots. And I'll stick a point over here in Peru because that lets us do, potentially in the future, we could do Chilean realignment part 2, and this time do it at +1 if we fill Peru up. So that starts to put a little pincer movement on his warlords in Chile, his junta in Chile. And, he takes the Hail Mary realignment in Argentina, and it comes up Peronistas. Oh my goodness, he has ejected us fully from Argentina. He did so look at that, because it was a reasonable move when we did it, and it's a very good move when he did it. Now he would have had a second chance if he only got us partially out. See, he had control of Chile, we had control of Argentina, but no adjacent influence. See, so he took the roll and he got a good roll, and now we are just out of Argentina. Oh boy, don't cry for me, Argentina. And so that was a very good result for him. He did give us some little pokers in some of unimportant countries, and he gave us a guy in Saudi Arabia, which, we're going to build on that. But he got us out of Argentina, which I hate. I hate that. All right, so I still want to wait as long as possible before I play Voice of America, and I want to save Ask Not till next turn. So it's going to be Camp David Accords. And if he left me, if I had one guy left in Argentina, then I'd probably put a guy back into Argentina and another one into Botswana. But with the board sitting the way it is, or I could have put one back in Argentina and put one into Peru and, get that pincer movement ready. But with things standing as it is, I just don't, filling up those two little countries doesn't seem important enough. It doesn't weigh as much in my mind as grabbing another greedy point. And, getting some not completely irrelevant influence, slightly irrelevant, mostly irrelevant, but, takes him a little longer in Egypt. He's probably not rushing takes him a little longer in Israel to grab it. He's probably not rushing into Egypt with Sadat not yet accounted for. Maybe he's kind of carefully milking Sadat along in his hand as his hold card. But in any event, we got some extra guys, and we got a point. So, point it is. Okay, and then there's a good time. Yeah, he had a lot of American events, and this is a very good time for him to play. When you're the Soviet player and you have nuclear subs, the right time to resolve it is, in your last phase. So he's grabbing Argentina. Now we can take a coup without having the DEFCON. We could take a battleground coup, so we could coup into one of the African places. We could coup into Argentina. But see, we'd have to use one of our really good cards for that. And I really think that the value of Ask Not is just so high if we can ditch a 5-point scoring card with it or something, that it's not worth just taking an extra battleground coup in regions that have already scored. And Voice of America, honestly, I'd rather rip him out of all of Southern Africa than put me into one of the countries. So I think we're not going to get that extra coup, so I think he gets off scot-free with his nuclear subs, and that's why you play it at the end of your turn, also because I can't use it multiple rounds in a row. So it's come down to the Voice of America and our two real options. We got two ways to go here. One of them is to rip all of his guys out of South Africa and 1 point from somewhere else, or the other one is to rip 4 of his points out of Libya and Egypt, and that would give us control of Egypt, probably forever, because of Sadat. He's not going to want to really coup back in. I mean, it would be a risky show there. And then we could get into Libya. So, that's the Libya-Egypt plan, or there's the South Africa plan. And the thing about the South Africa plan is, we're now starting to think that it's unlikely he has South Africa. He's not going to get to play it this turn. It could be his card. I don't know. It feels like he would, if he'd had that, then he wouldn't have played puppet governments for the event. If he had a perfectly functional 2-op card that he didn't have to give as a guy in all over the world, he would have saved that to space next turn, is my professional opinion on that. So what I expect is he doesn't have it, and he's got a card. We're going to have 1 card left, and there's enough cards in the discard pile to deal us each exactly 7 cards, and then we'll each get 1 redraw card. And so it is a precisely 50-50 shot that he gets South Africa, or that we get South Africa. If we get it, we're spacing it, and we're just in like Flynn down in Southern Africa, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be huge. We've already disposed of the Portuguese thing, and that would just be awesome. If he gets it, well, then he's gonna probably headline it or play it in his first action round, depending. And it'll just be defeat. It'll be nothing. It'll all come to nothing. However, and that would normally kind of point me toward, well, let's just do the Middle East thing then. But the thing is, if I take 3 points out of Southern Africa, I can actually take 1 point out of Libya, and that means that we've actually got a pretty good shot at getting back into Libya, and Egypt hardly matters anyway, because one way or the other, Sadat is definitely, somebody's drawing Sadat next turn. So we're getting Egypt. So it's not all that important for us to get Egypt, because barring, he could get the card and then nurse it along and not give it to us, but that comes at a price for him. So I'm actually feeling like the Southern Africa strategy, with the other point coming out of Libya, is actually the odds-on thing to do, because then there's 50-50 chance that we might get Libya and Southern Africa, and that sounds really good. So I think that's the play. I think having, as much as there's, as much as it might come to very little, it's actually the best use of Voice America, since I would really rather save Ask Not than Voice of America. As good of a card as Voice of America is, I think Ask Not, used for a bad scoring card, imagine me dumping Central America or Asia or something like that later in the game. I feel like that's better than the sort of taking a little boring coup and then saving Voice of America for some also actually known future situation. So off they go, off the Libyan point goes, and the turn ends. And that brings us to turn 7. And we each, nobody loses the ops, DEFCON to 3. So we each get, before the reshuffle, a big honking hand of 7 cards each. So there's all the rest of the cards. And then we get 1 reach around card each, and the UN intervention seems to like to come to us on the reshuffles, and that is where we are going to stop. The score remains at 6 points for the good guys. We have a hand of mostly unseen cards, some very interesting ones in there that are going to need to be dealt with and talked about and strategized around. So it's a very exciting, awesome bit of homework. I'm excited to hear the arguments in the comment sections, etc. So, as always, what are we going to headline? What are we going to headline? But even more important than that, what is our plan now? All the scorecards have just reshuffled. Now, it's very unlikely he's holding on right this second, but he could. But we're about to come into the late war. We get the late war cards next turn. And yeah, which ones of these cards are we eventing? Which ones of these are we playing for ops? What continents do we care the most about? Where should we be trying to make progress? what is it that we're gonna do? So tell me in comments, and you can start your over and under. We're coming to the late war, so it's time to, say, are you with me or are you against me? Is it gonna be a three-peat, or is this when the Twilight Struggle Play the Expert streak ends? Is this when it ends? We've got 6 points to the good, so you tell me, and we'll see you next time on Twilight Struggle Play the Experts.